Welcome to Delicious and Nutritious. Where we make the tastiest food from the best quality ingredients. And today what we're gonna be doing is celebrating the Thanksgiving season, guys. I hope you guys are ready because what we're gonna do is make grain-free apple pie. So I am going to have the filling, we're gonna make that, and then we're also going to make a staple, which is going to be basically a walnut and date crust. I know some of you guys may want more of a crunchy crust, and there are those crusts out there, including pre-made crusts if you are gluten-free or if you're not gluten-free, but today I wanna keep it as healthy as possible for every party involved. But if you are allergic to nuts, this recipe is probably not gonna be for you. So today what we're gonna do is use everything we need right here. The recipe is gonna be in the pinned comments and in the description of all the videos. As always, this is gonna be Dr. Jocker's recipe. He is an absolute brilliant mind. If you guys need any nutritional information, he does an absolutely phenomenal job at it. So what we're gonna use is apples today. So I have two different types of apples. I have the Fuji apples, and then I also have the Granny Smith apples. I feel like the combination of these two apples really does well in here. If you have a preference, the Granny Smith apples are gonna be a little bit more sour, while the red apples in general are gonna be a little bit more sweet, and some of them are a little bit crispy. Then you are also gonna need coconut oil, or you can do grass-fed butter. I typically go for the coconut oil. This recipe, I'm gonna be using refined as always. Whenever I'm cooking or doing anything like that, it's gonna be refined. Next, we're gonna be using vanilla. This is gonna be in a non-alcoholic glycerin base. And then we're also gonna need cinnamon. Cinnamon, fantastic. Make sure it's organic as always. Everything we do pretty much here is gonna be completely organic and as close to as natural as possible. And then we're gonna need some raw honey. I absolutely love the raw honey that is not liquid at room temperature, because I don't believe that honey is actually liquid at room temperature. So if you see here, I'll even flip it around. I could sit here forever and no honey will actually come out of this, right? You have to scoop it. It didn't even start to drip at all. Literally just sitting there, okay? So that's the type of honey I use. This is gonna be Heavenly Organics. Really like this honey. Then we're gonna need a little bit of almond butter. So the almond butter, organic, creamy. And then we're gonna need a little bit of sea salt as well. And then for the crust, it's super easy and super simple. We're gonna be doing medjool dates. Medjool dates are going to have a higher nutrient content, so they're gonna be able to help you digest the sugars easily without having as much spike in the bloodstream. And then we're gonna have raw organic walnuts. I always suggest using your walnuts and going ahead and putting them in water, soaking them, and then dehydrating them to deactivate the anti-nutrient properties. Sometimes you guys may have a little bit of chalkiness or anything in your mouth. Once you soak and dehydrate them, it really changes the texture of the walnut and makes it that much better. And then as far as our utensils go, we're gonna need some type of spatula or spoon, wooden spoon. We're gonna need our handy dandy Oziri cooking pan that's gonna be non-toxic. It's also gonna be in the description below. And then we're gonna need, for the crust, it's very easy to do, but you do need preferably a food processor. Like I told you guys, if you're gonna be cooking raw and natural, it's a great thing. And then I'm gonna be using a springform pan. This is a stainless steel one. And then obviously we have our knife. So let's jump right in. Step number one, we need to cut up our apples. So for me, if I'm cutting an apple, you guys know I do have specific techniques that I use. So I'm going 1, 2, and we're gonna dice this. So then I just basically put a little cut in the side right there, a little cut in the side right there, and then I have the core taken out. I'll just chop, and then I'll chop if there's nothing in there. And then this will be set aside, and then I can go ahead and I can do 1, 2, and then we're just gonna cut them into quarter pieces right there, about this big. If you wanna get them a little smaller, you can. It's totally up to you and it's your recipe. This one, when I cut, will have the stem in it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take that out. And then we are gonna go ahead here. That one's probably a 3-er. 1, 2, 3. And bam, we got that all the way done. And then I have my trusty Vitamix cutting board right here. You guys see quite a bit of scratch marks on there. I use this thing constantly. It's my favorite cutting board to use. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that. So that one I can grab. That one has a core on it, and I'm just gonna cut the core out real quick. And then I am gonna go ahead and cut all of these apples, and I will be right back. Okay, and as I am cutting them, they are starting to get a little bit unruly here, so I'm gonna start throwing them in the pan because we are gonna have to saute the apples. Yes, you heard it here, saute the apples. So that's already a pretty good amount of apples right here. So I'm gonna put coconut oil in here right now, and I'm gonna start sauteing them and get them a little bit ahead of speed. Remember, you can use grass-fed butter or ghee, depending on what you do. So that's about 1.5 tablespoons. And then I am going to drop this right on the stove, and I'm gonna start sauteing them with the top on. If you put the top on, it keeps the heat. It kind of starts getting them. It's gonna put a little bit of liquid in them, but once we put the almond butter and some of the other things in there, it's gonna really start condensing it down and make it perfect. And then we have the final part, are gonna be the rest of the apples. So we are just gonna go ahead and toss the rest of the apples in here. I feel like the longest part of this recipe is just sauteing the apples. Because when we start doing this, we're gonna start getting the walnuts as well as the dates ready. We can prepare the crust as these start to saute, and then we'll start throwing in the rest of the ingredients, and then it's just a waiting game. And once they're all cooked and ready to go, you just combine them all together and bam, it's done just like that. Okay, now while that's starting to saute, what we're gonna need is we're gonna need our dates. So we need about a cup of dates and a cup of walnuts. So I have some dates left over here. It's probably just shy of a cup. Make sure to always check your dates to make sure there's no pits in there, because there is nothing worse than biting into a piece of what you think is gonna be soft and it has a big hard pit in there, because the date pits are quite big and they will mess your teeth up for sure. I've done it before on accident. I've left one of them in there, but usually you can hear when you're doing that. You'll be able to hear that that's going on. So we're gonna go ahead and do this. Perfect. That's gonna combine together, and then we'll put a little bit of salt in here as well, just a pinch of salt to pull that crust together. And then we're gonna throw this on the food processor. Okay, and then I also put about a tablespoon of coconut oil in here, and I just food processed it until it gets a little bit chunky. If you check this out, right there, a little bit chunky. And if you put your hand in there and you wanna clump it and it kind of sticks together, that's where you really wanna sit at. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the pan. And then while those apples are sauteing over there, which we will check out here in a second, we are then going to make this all into the crust. Okay, so we're pushing down right here. Ideally, I didn't have quite enough dates. I thought I had a little bit more. I put a little bit more. I probably go a cup and a half. This is a big springform pan, so I wanna make sure that the whole bottom is covered and then it has just a small lip on it. If I use a smaller one, it does work a little bit better, because then I get a little bit more lip, but I am going to put this in the fridge. Just wanna be a little bit more like an apple crumble. You could definitely double the amount of recipe, but just remember that dates are very sweet, so you have to be careful when doing that. So I have it all pressed down, and since there's coconut oil here, as soon as you put it in the refrigerator, it's gonna start really hardening up exactly how you want a crust to be, because right now it's a little bit soft, but as soon as you put it in the fridge, like I said, ideally I would have a little bit more and I could kind of arc it up, but it's gonna work out perfect. Okay, so that's that. Now we're gonna head on over there. We're gonna need a couple things. We have the dates done. We are going to need our honey. We're gonna need our almond butter. And we are going to need our cinnamon as well as our vanilla. And all that is gonna then go in there with a little bit of sea salt, and it's combined to have the perfect grain-free apple pie. Okay, so we have already doubled this recipe, so we're gonna be using double the amount that it's called for. If you look right there, it's already looking really good. A little bit of water in there, which is good. All right, so the apples are getting softer. The goal is to like find the perfect balance of not so hard and not so soft, right? We don't want them mushy, but we don't want them hard. It depends. You can have it either direction. So we're going to go with a teaspoon, it usually calls for half, of vanilla. There you go. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And typically you do want to make sure that you are sauteing the apples before you start putting the stuff inside. It says a pinch of cinnamon. I really like cinnamon, so I'm gonna go ahead and throw a little bit more than a pinch on top. Going to not ask for it, but I'm gonna put a little bit of sea salt in there. Sea salt really rounds out the sweetness. And then it's gonna ask for a tablespoon of almond butter, so I'm gonna go ahead and toss that in there. Remember, we have double the recipe here if you're following me along. So I'm gonna need 2 tablespoons of almond butter. Almond butter being the goo that's going to congeal it all together just perfectly. And now the aroma is really coming right now. It smells absolutely delicious. And then finally, we are gonna need a tablespoon of raw honey. So let's go ahead and stir this around so I can show you guys how it really starts to come together here. The almond butter really makes it this beautiful, thick, creamy, congealed. Look at all the water getting soaked up from all the apples sauteed. And then we're gonna have this amazing looking grain-free apple pie here. And another thing that I didn't mention is if you wanna put walnuts in here, you can put chopped walnuts at the end as well. That is definitely acceptable and it works very well. Okay, so for me, a tablespoon was not quite sweet enough, so I'm gonna put a little bit more, about 2 tablespoons. I do like the call there by Dr. Jockers. Okay, so here it is congealing. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt in there, a little bit more cinnamon. I want some more cinnamon in there. I just tested it, and we are pretty much done. That pretty much sums up this apple pie. It sautés really quick. Look at that. I like the consistency of the apples. They're a little crunchy, still get a little crisp, and they're not too soft as well. And there we have it. We now have the crust and the apple pie. So there you go, bang. Just like that, we are good and ready to go. It's been in there since we started, and besides that little piece that I didn't quite pack down, it looks great. So now what you wanna do is you wanna take this, put it in there, and you can either serve it right away, or you can put it back in the fridge and it's gonna serve extremely well in that manner. But before we do so, I'm not gonna try it with the crust. I wanna try this together, okay? So this is very hot, as you can see. So we're gonna go ahead and blow on this. This is like one of my favorite recipes. It's so fast. Alrighty, here we go. Apples going into the crust. Remember, the spoons that are flexible are amazing for this portion to help you guys out. Go ahead and get everything right in there. Because then we can go ahead and scrape the bottom of the pan relatively well. Make sure we don't miss out on any of that. And then we can go ahead and grab it from the sides and keep it centered in the middle. And the beautiful thing about a springform pan is all we have to do is pop the bottom off. Boom, we have an amazing apple pie right there. Really fast, really simple. Look at that. Fast, simple, easy, grain-free, and healthy. If you guys do want to go all out, chop up a little bit of walnuts, sprinkle them over the top, put it in the refrigerator, and then when you bust this out and you're like, this is healthy, they're like, there's no way. Like apple pie, there's tons of sugar. It's honey. We have apples. We have cinnamon, blood sugar regulator from the cinnamon. We have vanilla, great spice as well. Then we also have dates and walnuts. Walnuts being a little bit of fatty. And then also, depending on what you used as far as the cooking oil, we have coconut oil, or we have butter, or grass-fed organic butter, and there you have it. This recipe is a slam dunk, healthy, positive, delicious, and nutritious. So I just wanna say thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for being patient with me as I've been traveling the world. If you've been following me on my Pokemon channel, if you do not, the Trainer Club on YouTube. So thank you everybody for cooking with me today. I'm excited to cook more delicious and nutritious recipes together, as well as explore more delicious and nutritious restaurants together as well, where we're gonna keep changing the world one bite at a time.